All right, so we are talking the drivers of return. So here to tell us more about it, we have Barbour from Macy's, Curran from JLL. Thank you guys for joining us. Jane, I want to start with you. Now, you're the global head of HR operations at JLL. Set the scene for us as far as the corporate world, right? There's a lot going on. There's return to office. There's new AI technologies. What is the mood amongst your employees? What are they happy about? What are they concerned about? Because I'm sure this is a question that you ask them.
Yes, and thanks for having me today.
Sure.
I think our employees are excited about the future, but also a little bit reserved. I'm proud that I work at an organization that is tech leading and putting a lot of investment in tech and AI. So I think that's something that's engaging our employees because they want to stay relevant, be relevant, and have future skills. I think that a concern is always just this unpredictable market that we're in that seems to be forever. There's geopolitical issues and things of that nature. So I think we try to help them focus on what they can control and the impact that they can have, and all the other things that are going around the globe. Just stay focused on our clients and what you can contribute, and hopefully it'll all work out.
Excellent. Now, Sean, you're the Senior Vice President of Supply Chain for Macy's. So I feel like I have to start with that elephant in the room, tariffs. Okay, we have to go there and start there. But Macy's has managed disruptions in the past. So how are you handling this differently, or maybe not? So.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's certainly an interesting time. We joke that we feel like we've been through every type of potential disruption over the past 4 to 5 years that one could imagine. But seemingly every year we come up with a new one. So I think what we've done over the past couple of years is really harden the supply chain. We've introduced a significant amount of adaptability and anticipation into the supply chain. So we have found that really relying on and building on the relationships we have with our providers, whether those are suppliers or manufacturers, providers of transportation, so on and so forth, have allowed us to continue to adapt and pivot as necessary. We don't know what the next potential disruption will be, but we feel like we've got a pretty good idea of how to ebb and flow the supply chain and flex as needed.
Now, that goes kind of hand in hand. We had a question before from the audience that was, do you think tariffs could influence onshoring of manufacturing? Why or why not?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what we will likely continue to see, at least for our purposes, is we've had a fairly dynamic approach to where we source from. We have adjusted the places and the suppliers that we work with based on whether it's disruption, tariff articulation, so on and so forth. So I think what we're likely to see is we will continue to remain dynamic. We will make adjustments to our network as necessary, and whether that is onshoring or nearshoring or whatever it may be, I think we'll remain flexible.
Excellent. And Jane, the key to workforce optimization, how are you leveraging technology to find that efficiency within the organization?
Yeah, I think what's changed, I've been in the workforce a long time, and each economic downturn, this one feels the most shift, at least that I've seen in our organization, that you want to come out of this with not another hiring spike and then another downturn. So I think we're really, really focused on operational excellence, and that the old way of growing was really, well, we need to hire more people. We must hire more people. That's the only way we can generate more revenue. And I think that that's totally changing now. Yes, we have a huge sales force and we have a great team out there meeting our clients' needs, but what are we doing to make sure that, for example, I'm in human resources. Well, we generate a lot of value. We don't generate revenue. So how can I make sure that there's not waste in the HR system? How can I make sure that I'm not adding, my team's busy, let's add headcount. And my team knows, don't ask me for headcount, because I'm going to ask you what's broken. What part of your process is causing your team pain or anxiety or feeling like they need more help? Because we're going to fix that process before I'm going to say, let's add more headcount. So I think that's what's changing, is just the dedication. These after each economic cycle, say you boom back up, and then it's the next one comes. So why don't you get focused on really good process, and that you can ride the ups and downs with the team you have versus, keep going back to growth through headcount.
And John, when we spoke earlier before, you said something interesting. You said everyone is becoming a supply chain expert in a way. Me, where's my package? Everyone wants to know. But what kind of managing that nowadays? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's become a topic, right? Before it was kind of something that you just assumed worked well. And in the pandemic and in the recent years, everybody's become an expert. You're at home, you're tracking your orders, when is it going to show up, so on and so forth. And I think a lot of what's been accomplished through the past couple of years is that visibility has actually been rather positive. I think supply chain has reached a level of fluency and prominence in conversations that historically perhaps it was kind of something that was secondary or tertiary. So what I've seen is that it's actually pressed us to get better. You know, it's the need for adaptability, agility, yes, speed, but also flexibility. So in a lot of ways, the fluency that most consumers have built over the past couple of years in terms of where's my package, where's my order, what options make sense for me, has actually been really good in terms of pushing the broader supply chain forward.
Now, how have you improved performance, accuracy, inventory?
Yeah, you know, it's a challenge to get faster, right? There are certain things that you can do simply. You can fulfill faster. You can adjust your delivery networks. You can work with new partners, so on and so forth. But you also have to get more sophisticated in terms of how you allocate inventory. And for us, we have a significantly changing breadth of assortment that every year a large portion of that assortment is something we have never bought before and we will never buy again. And so we are trying to anticipate and understand how demand is going to materialize, not just for a shirt, a sport coat, shoes, so on and so forth. So we've had to grow more sophisticated in terms of our ability to adapt and bring in demand sensing so that we better allocate inventory across the breadth of our fulfillment network and our stores. And we do our best to iterate and get better, but you'll never get it quite right. So we have advanced our capabilities to forward deploy a portion of our inventory, then bring in the demand sensing and understand how well demand is actually materializing against our plan, and then fill in based on when demand is actually occurring.
Now, Jane, you spoke earlier about your employees and the mood amongst the employees, but you also recruit talent. So talk about the today's job market, because, for example, there's economic data out, right? Today we heard job openings higher, but the overall has talked about this slowdown in the labor market. So what are you seeing?
Well, I think like if anyone else has a family member out there or friend that's in the job market, it's really tough right now. And it is confusing because you're like, but wait, you know, the job market report comes out every Friday, the first Friday of every month. So, and I obviously read it extensively. And for the last year, actually 5 years, it's all about healthcare. So if you are a nurse or a skilled trades professional, things of that nature, what do we call like stand-up jobs, deskless workers, those are in high demand. There are not enough nurses, there are not enough teachers, there are not enough skilled trades workers to fill the vacancies. Where you have an oversupply and you see people not really landing jobs would be in tech, marketing, HR, you know, places that have maybe stagnated. And most importantly, people aren't quitting. So when you came out of the pandemic, 21, 22, it was a hockey stick. I mean, at one point, there were over 300,000 recruiter openings. I distinctly remember that post. There were more recruiter openings than there were like software engineers. You'll never see that again. You will never, like my recruiting team is healthy and great, but I'm like, we won't be hiring recruiters for a long time. Not that we're not hiring, we're hiring, but our systems are getting so much faster and recruitment's right for automation that you can speed things up. So those are just some things that we're seeing in the labor market that if you're doing stand-up work, there's plenty of opportunities. There's still probably 3-to-1 job opportunities for you. But if you're doing sit-down work, knowledge work, people aren't quitting, which means there's not openings, there's no churn happening. So an example I have is my sister worked at Target for 15 years in marketing, was recently laid off, and I mean, months and months and months, and finally had to take a contract job. So there just aren't the jobs plentiful. So if the last time you were in the labor market was after that cycle where there were, you know, it was a great resignation, and now you're back in the market, you're like, well, what happened? And it's the whole world changed. I don't know if it'll ever go back with AI coming. You know, it's really companies are trying to figure out how will we grow, where will we grow, and you just don't have that AI impact with a lot of those stand-up jobs, nurses, skilled trades workers. It's just not impacting that group.
Yeah, AI is changing a lot. And I want to get into that in just a bit, too. Sean, as far as now we talk supply chain, so let's talk demand. You work with different analytics technology capabilities when it comes to improving that. So take us through it, you know, from the ports to the buyers to the consumer, how it looks.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things that we really landed on was that a lot of the challenges in managing an end-to-end value chain came from gaps in visibility And it really came from a propensity of people to have to come up with opinions or perspective because there was an absence of fact where it was available. So one of the things that we really focused on was understanding where there were gaps in information in the value chain and understanding where people were have to come up with perspective. So we started to basically eliminate the need for formulating an opinion, and we started to knock down the places where there are gaps. So you mentioned a couple of them, but what we looked at was we looked at the areas where data was available but was not being made to good use. So we started developing a series of tools that basically increased the level of transparency and predictability of what was going to happen in terms of inventory flow. So taking into pieces of information like what was happening at origin ports, what type of delays were we seeing, what were ocean transits looking like versus what they were planned to be, what type of delay or backlog were we seeing at domestic ports, so on and so forth. So we brought all of these different factors in, and then we started to build the intelligence and the modeling to give a projection of when something was going to arrive all the way down to the PO and item level. The reason that we did this was that we thought that we could eliminate the concern or the potential what if, and we can use all the different data sources that were available to actually come up with a fairly high degree of confidence in terms of when our inventory was likely to land. That information is extremely available and valuable to our partners, particularly our merchants, our stores, our digital teams, so on and so forth, because they don't have to guess. They know. They have almost certainty in terms of when product is going to be available, and that goes into what type of promotions are we running, how do we think about our assortment, so on and so forth. So it's really about making do with all the information that's available and finding a way to effectively synthesize large data sets to make it useful in terms of insights.
You want to take the guesswork out.
That's right.
Exactly. So, Jane, you talked about today's job market and what it looks like. What are you looking for as far as talent? I was reading an article, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, my days get confused all over the place, but it was saying how AI is becoming more of a conversation in the interview process. You know, you're asking more, what's your involvement with it? Talk a little bit about that and what else you look for in talent.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now you're really looking for curious people. Curious and resilient, to me, are the two things that I most often am trying to decipher during an interview. Curious around AI, like, do they work for an organization that is progressive enough to be investing in AI technology for their employees to use? That's important to me. If they're working for a company that hasn't made that investment, then what are they doing themselves to maybe use AI to plan vacations or write memos, or, you know, where is their curiosity thinking about being having future-ready skills, either enabled by their current organization or that they're curious enough to figure out how to make it part of their daily life. And then resilient. I mean, I'd say, and I'm sure this is many companies, if you don't like change, you're not going to enjoy working here because we're always changing. We're a professional service firm, so we've got to be doing things better and faster and more innovative than our customers will, or, you know, why wouldn't they, you know, give us their business? So I really champion change and really reward folks that, you know, I say, you know, you want to be a leading edge. You want to be out there driving change and not resisting it.
And Sean, I'm going to bring you into this conversation because I hear you have a knack for finding talent. What do you look for?
I love what Jane said. I think curiosity is certainly one of the prominent skills that we look for. I mean, intelligence goes without saying, but there's a lot of different types of intelligence. I think what we find when we look for talent and the talent that's successful with our organization, you know, curiosity goes a long way. The intelligence is paramount. The resilience, I think, is also a great point. But it's the communication skills. It's the ability to go in, to gain entry to a conversation, to learn from those that are experts without raising an alarm or why are you asking me these questions. So that healthy curiosity, but the way to do it, it's not threatening, right? It's inviting. And then being able to synthesize that information in a way that they can communicate all the way from somebody that is fulfilling an order all the way up to our CEO walking through one of our fulfillment centers with us. So I think we look for kind of those dynamic, curious, highly communicative people that can be dangerous really anywhere you put them. It's not necessarily based on their background or their expertise. They can be very effective and fluent in a broad spectrum.
Yeah. Can I say two things to that?
Yeah, sure.
We have like two mantras on my team. It's progress over perfection. Yeah. So if you're a perfectionist, I'm like, you're not going to like working here. Yeah. And two, high energy, low maintenance. I said that's what you should pride yourself on. Be high energy, low maintenance, to your point, and be able to do many different things in different departments.
I love that. As far as the recruiting process, so we
Yes.
talked about AI. How is that changing the recruiting process? I'm sure there's good points to it, but I'm sure there's also the other side to it. I mean, you hear stories, people using AI to do resumes, to create their resumes, or they're using AI during a video interview, to give them the answers to the questions. I mean, all these, you can't keep up with it. So how
Right.
is it changing the recruiting process?
Well, I'll start with the good parts first.
Yes, please.
The good parts are that ultimately we should all be hiring for skills and not pedigree. Like we should be figuring out what are the skills that we need for the longevity of our organization, and not just does somebody know how to do VLOOKUPs in Excel, right? Like separate what can you teach and what can't you teach, and that's going to be the big part of recruitment. But in recruiting, it's further along than many other functions when it comes to AI. So we've invested in a lot of tools that keep the human in the loop but speed up the process. We hire from the boiler room to the boardroom, and I need the process to move quickly at certain levels to make sure that we meet our clients' needs. So we're adding a lot of AI to help the recruiter find the right candidate and then re-engage them. So when you are in recruiting, one person gets the job. If you had 100 applicants, 99 didn't. So we're in the business of no. But what we're trying to do is every time you get eyeballs on a rec and somebody applies, that's their time, and that's a fee it costs us to get them to apply. So we're using AI to re-engage. So you have all these applicants. We have 1.5 million people that apply to our 30,000 hires a year. So we're trying to make sure that we've invested in that 1.5 million that have taken the time to fill out our application. Just because they didn't get that job doesn't mean they can't get the next job. So you're just trying to constantly re-engage your candidate base and keep them excited, and hopefully hires and good brand ambassadors. The bad actors, I don't think HR or recruiting professionals have totally figured out how to negate the bad parts of AI, right? I mean, so that all resumes will start to look the same. They'll fake assessments and you won't know that till they start. So I think that we haven't balanced the bad part with the good part yet. And I think it's just going to be a matter of keeping ahead and learning and figuring out what you can do to make sure that it's used for good and not for bad.
All right. And Sean, I want to bring it to you for automation. How does that help with fulfilling demand? How has automation helped with that?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is, there is this topic of AI, and so much is being bundled under AI. We've all become experts in terms of how to search or ask questions or write resumes or even answer interview questions,
Right.
which is kind of interesting to watch. We've seen automation in a number of places. Certainly automation in terms of robotics. We have implemented a significant amount of robotics over the past couple of years. That automation is really serving a number of purposes. For us, it is increasing our ability to have storage density and throughput density. So that's our ability to get faster in terms of how we fulfill demand and how we hold inventory. And we're also seeing advancements in demand sensing. So automation that is bringing in a number of disparate sources, internal and external, and trying to synthesize them together to provide a more useful perspective and enrich how we're allocating and how we're making our buying decisions. The one limitation that I would say broadly we see is that foundational data is absolutely paramount before you can benefit truly from automation. It's almost like we're at a place where the tools are so interesting and their prospects are so rich that we're leaping towards those technologies while we're not necessarily addressing the foundational data capabilities that are necessary to take advantage of automation. So I think what we're going to see in supply chain is AI is going to continue to play a greater role in time, but there's going to be a need for technology and providers that are able to integrate all of the legacy automation, the legacy demand signals, the legacy software with what's coming next. And today, I would say that's a bit of a gap.
Okay. In the last few moments we have, looking ahead, I want you to speak to Jane about where the future of work is headed. And then for Sean, where the future of retail is headed. Jane, you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think we will continue to expand and learn how AI can be a part of our daily work. I do think it's all about tech-enabled processes and keeping humans in the loop. You will continue to find ways to bring this new advent of technology into what we do, and it will reshape jobs. We're working very hard right now to say, okay, our investment in AI will affect what jobs? Okay, so what are the skills? We don't want it, like I said, going back to hiring and laying off. We want to figure out, okay, if that's going to affect that group of people, how can we retrain them to go do something else? So I think that's what we're focused on, is just skills, the evolution of skills, and moving people to where the work is versus saying, Your time's up.
Perfect. And we have about 30 seconds left, so
I'll do it quickly. I think retail is going to look a lot like what we've seen in terms of disruption. I think it's going to be ever-changing. I think we've seen that e-commerce, pure e-commerce growth has slowed down. It's almost normalizing. So I think we're rapidly approaching a place where it's going to be all channels. And I think where it's going to be paramount is the connectivity with the customer, the understanding of what she or he is looking for, and that adaptability and flexibility to be, whether it's in a store, it's at the doorstep, it's at a locker, so on and so forth. So I think flexibility and anticipation is going to be what separates strong retailers from those that are behind.